and welcome everyone. And this is the 17th episode. And we recently rebranded our weekly webcast into Launch with Love, like Mario just said. Love as lighting up ventures. And we're going to talk about building the bridge, business and friends in Korea. And we have Mario, Semin, and Jose, and Isabel today. How are you doing, everyone?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Bonjour.
So, all right. Semin, you had lived in Paris for a semester when you were a student, right?
Yeah, I'm lucky to take the spot beginning before we start our Lunch with Love episode. Yes, I was in France for about 6 months when I was in college for an exchange student program. And I just wanted to make a quote before we begin how vibrant of a city it was in terms of the culture and also the business side of it. So as a business student actually over there, there was a lot of chance to collaborate with not only the students in France, but also from neighboring countries. Geographic map of where France is, it's like in the middle of everywhere. So you can take a flight 1 hour to any country that you wish all over Europe. So I think that was the most exciting part of being in France, actually. So I'll pass it up. I don't want to steal the show here because I don't have that much experience compared to Isabel here. So Mario, why don't you take it, hand it over to Isabel?
Yeah, so we've actually been, Isabel and I, we've crossed paths several times from our side with both Allianz as an agency and with French Tech, with whom we are partners with. We've been collaborating here and there in several projects and discussions. And we just realized that there seems to be a lot of opportunity for collaboration between France and Korea. So we asked Isabel to come, on board today with us and talk to us a little bit about, what her role is with Allianz and French Tech, and also to talk more about, what's going on, what are the opportunities that people can actually tap into between both of these economies. So Isabel, why don't we start off by, tell us briefly how long you've been in Korea, what brought you here, and what do you do now at Allianz?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, hello everyone who is here, and thank you, Mario and the team, for inviting me today. That's great. We've been talking about this for several months now, and it's finally happening. So yeah, I'm Isabel. I'm in Korea for a bit more than a year and a half now. And I'm currently working as an open innovation manager at a company named Allianz. I think I will have a bit more time to explain about everything a bit later. And I'm also the community coordinator for the French Tech Seoul here. What brought me in Korea? That's a really good question. Everyone is asking me that. So when I was in France, I was working in the innovation and startup ecosystem for a few years. And the last 3 years, I've been working in an accelerator and was handling everything related to international partnership, acceleration, et cetera. And the big project we had was actually with Korea. We were one of the, maybe the only, or one of the few French accelerator doing business with Korean startup and Korean governments. And we had over 15 or 20 Korean startup coming over for about 2 years. And then I made a lot of network in Korea. I've come here, I made a lot of partners, met a lot of people, and I just really liked it and decided that it was my time to go the other way around. And that's why I moved to Korea last year. Yeah.
So you've been living here now since last year, and how has your time been here, especially professionally? So what are your first impressions about, now that you're here, of, what Korea is like at the ground level? And tell us how that fits into what you're doing with ASEAN's.
Well, so basically the image I had of Korea was built up with a lot of partnership and a lot of trips. So living here, I was a bit different from what I expected, but not that much actually. And I came here on just the hunch that something would happen. And actually a lot more happened than when I expected. I didn't expect to be here still a year and a half after. I didn't expect to be working at a company such as Alliance, which I didn't even know at the time. And that people just trusted me with the soul, like the French tech soul, as much as they did. So that's been like really excitement and really a surprise that I've been able to do so much, like on the short time that I've been here.
So tell us more about ASEAN's. What do you do there exactly?
Yeah. So what is Alliance first? So Alliance is, as we call ourselves, a brand tech company. We are what we call an advanced model of digital agency. It means that we do all the work related to digital marketing, UX, UI, website, etc., mostly for global companies who wants to come to Korea and settle and grow here, but also the other way around, meaning like Korean companies who wants to have more of a global impact. We do this for really big corporation, but also the past few years, we've started to work a bit more with startups and also like government. So that's been really interesting. And why we call ourselves a brand tech company and no longer a digital agency, it's because, and that's a bit of why I'm now in Alliance, not being a digital expert myself, is that upon the request of all of the partners and clients that Alliance had over the year, it come up that something a bit more was needed than just building website, and that this bit more, meaning understanding Korea in itself as an ecosystem, as what's happening in the innovation, what's happening in Korea. People were asking us that, and that's not typically the question you ask a digital agency. And we decided to feel like, okay, so actually we're not anymore just a digital agency, we're a bit more, we can do way more for our clients. We can really build bridges, we can really explain what's happening here. And that's where I came in as an open innovation manager, where my role is basically to build up, the relation between Alliance as an agency and like all the clients that we have to the local ecosystem, startups, innovation, and like make something out of it for everyone to grow. That's basically my role. Yeah.
So ASEAN is starting to move into, let's say, a little bit more strategy and consulting on trends and business culture. Would that be an accurate way to say it?
It can be, yeah. So we've done research, we've done report mostly on what's happening on, for example, after COVID. So how it changed the digital ecosystem in Korea. That's something we're building and we're building right now for a lot of our clients. But also we're sourcing startups and innovative solutions for our clients, like looking into the local ecosystem, what we can do for them, and what would be a good solution that they could implement into their process and service and solution and their digital marketing strategy.
Okay, I see that's kind of interesting. And I think that Jose, you and I have talked a lot about this with several examples in Boston. This seems to be something that is happening across marketing and advertising, where agencies are no longer taking just the traditional role of making a website and then making maybe a little bit of content for social media, but they're being asked to be a bit more engaged with leadership on strategy, right?
Yeah, and not only in strategy, also referring to kind of the overall, let's see, vibe that a company has. You know, so for example, I know one of the agencies that works with the airline JetBlue, and in the United States, JetBlue's advertising is always a little humorous, a little cheeky. You know, the airplanes are called like Rhapsody in Blue, Blue Moon. That's, you know, you see the airplane. So it always has this attitude, and therefore the agency that works with JetBlue has to, or maybe they're the ones who came up with this idea, but, you know, has to continue with that attitude, vibe, kind of the feel of what this brand is like. And in order, I'm pretty sure though, you know, what Isabel is involved in is also making sure that if you're trying to target the Korean market, Korean consumers, that you hit the right attitude and the right vibe, not the wrong one. Because you could do something that you think is perfectly normal in France as a French company, and in Korea, it doesn't quite work that way. So like to your point, Mario, that these digital agencies are not just a content producer, but really a message producer and a targeted message, a cultural message production company.
And I think that at least something that Jose and I, you know, could probably talk great lengths about is how in the United States, well, around the world, it's important for brands to be authentic. Particularly in the United States, there's a lot of social issues now, right? Where you can't just talk about it and make it kind of look like you care about those things. Like consumers will know, you know, whether or not you are actually, you know, aligned to those values that you're saying publicly. And for that reason, I think for agencies, again, it becomes more than just like content and superficial advertising, but you've got to really be tuned in to society, to the customers, and you've got to be helping your clients as an agency get very closely aligned, not just on messaging, but like on actual values and activity. So now let's turn our attention to France, because I think this is a really important reason why we wanted to bring Isabel today, is to try to get, you know, a little bit of an understanding of what does this mean within the context of trying to do communications and marketing strategy as a French brand in Korea. I think that what many people are very aware of course, is the French luxury brands, right? And that is certainly one aspect of the French economy that is very marketable overseas. But Isabel, from your point of view, beyond just, or what, in addition to like the luxury brand image of France, what else is there about France that you and Asians are trying to have known here in Korea?
Yeah. So just one quick point is that Alliance, of course, like one of our founders French, and we have a lot of French in the team, so we're really linked to France. But we also we don't work just with French companies, we work with companies from all over the world. So I just want to say that straight.
Okay.
But indeed, we do have a lot of luxury, fashion, and beauty brands. But I think also it's because those are something that really attracts Korean customer. And they're really interested. They were basically some of the first ones to actually be interested in coming to Korea. So there is two aspects. There is what the Korean like expect to come from abroad or from France, and what France know about Korea as a market and is ready to like do the effort to export. So that's two different things, I think, in my opinion. And so in my few years of experience, what I've seen is that on both aspects, meaning what Koreans know about, perceive, and see coming from France, and as well what French people see of what's interesting in Korea, there's been a lot of changing in the different years. For Koreans, of course, luxury, fashion, tourism, Eiffel Tower, cheese, bread, baguettes, everything. And actually in France, until like when I said that we were one of the first accelerator to actually work with Korea 2-3 years ago, it means something. It means like at that point, Korea was also had an image where, for example, innovation was not really used to. We have like K-pop, BTS, those kind of stuff that comes in right now, but all the other aspects are also. You see the comments from Julien, yeah, crap.
All right, and crepes.
Thank you for the comments. So that goes both ways. And just to answer your question on the what is there more than crepe in France. So I actually, to answer those questions, you can simply go on all the government initiative and all the new report that is going on in France. About like there were actually a new report that was done a few days ago that I saw, and it was all the new French government priority for the next years, and all of that is really relevant because I think it also comes from like the big strengths that we have in our country. And one point that we definitely have to say is that France, of course, is not as strong as it was before, but industry in France, like really heavy industry, is something that has been in the country for like centuries. We're really good at everything related to, we have aircraft, we have transport, we have heavy industry, we have everything related to textile, building, but also a huge strike on health tech, pharmaceuticals. We have a lot of stuff going on over there. And on all the new digital technology, AI, big data, cloud, telecommunication, nanotech, IoT, I could say all the big words, and we're on it. We have a lot of people working on it. And even if you look at, I don't know, for example, TechNeighbor, a few years ago, they opened a new R&D center on AI. They opened it where? In France. They bought an AI research lab down in the south of France with like more than 80 researchers on it, which is a huge team. So that's just an example of, yeah, cheese, but not only.
I mean, you're still proud of the cheese, right?
I'm missing it.
One of my good friends from school is the head of AI Labs France in Paris for IBM. And you know, he's American, but he works in Paris and he's been there for a long time. And he does come to Boston because there's the IBM Watson Labs or at MIT. And so, you know, that's like, again, to what Isabel was saying, that there's all these industries and, you know, the big names around here that you hear all the time, you know, Sanofi and SNCF and Total and, you know, so these, all these large companies that they, for example, SNCF, which is or SNCF in English, I guess, which is the train company, was in Europe was the leader in bringing high-speed rail. You know, when those first trains came out, people were like, "Wow!" Of course, in Asia, in Japan, you know, they've been at it for a while, but France was really at the forefront of high-speed rail in Europe.
Which those trains are here in Korea as well.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Is that all the subway and trains in Korea, it's from a company named Alstom.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's just another example.
I was supposed to meet with them, with SNCF, with AI Labs France, and something happened in the world, and I wasn't able to go meet them for some reason.
Something happened.
Something happened.
Something starting with a C, I think.
Yeah, when Isabel mentioned at the beginning of the call that she didn't expect so many things to happen this year, that was the understatement of the call. It's like, oh yeah, quite a few things have happened. But you're right. I mean, definitely, Airbus was founded and it's still headquartered in France, isn't it?
Yeah,
Toulouse,
Airbus
right?
headquarters are in Toulouse.
So you're talking about the two major modes of transportation on Earth, which is airplanes and trains.
And
They,
one of the largest shipbuilding companies actually based in France as well. So
the engineering of shipbuilding, even though like Korea is very developed in shipbuilding, all the core technology I think are still coming from France. And also nuclear energy technology is France is, I believe, I understand it's #1 in the world. So for the nuclear technology as well.
yeah,
doesn't
but
France have like a really high
cheese?
right? Doesn't France have a very high proportion of nuclear power, taking up all of the electricity consumption?
We do have, yeah. Nuclear power is like really high.
And
Right.
I heard like a lot of energy export goes to the neighboring countries as well, including Germany and the UK as well.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
It's something else that I had known when I was an undergraduate was that mathematics as a discipline is very well developed in France. So it's not surprising that you would have a lot of AI research labs now, which is so mathematically intense, right? To be set up in France. So that's interesting because I think now we're getting to a point where at least in this call, we are reframing France. I mean, definitely there's those luxury items around, but there's a lot of high tech, products that are, very expansive. Like we said, in transportation, in energy, and in IT as well. So now that is very kind of like top level thinking about some of the strengths in France. So what would be the practical opportunities for someone here in Korea saying, okay, that sounds really cool. I want to get connected to, French high fashion and or high tech. How do they go about doing something like that?
So technically, you mean, well, first of all, talk to us.
Right.
That would be, I mean, so Agence, French Tech, if you're a startup. We also have all like business friends that is also specialized in making the bridge. So we have a lot of structure that are like here to help you, to help anyone who's interested in France to like know what's happening on the other side. There is also several now acceleration program and those kind of stuff that are happening between France and Korea. So I do know a lot about the startup part, but on all the other more traditional aspects, I would totally start to refer to business friends and other, and try to get in touch with big association. If you're in pharmaceutical or if you're in health tech, there is another like professional association linked to France that is here. Like we have a lot of stuff happening that are just here to make the bridge and help things get better. After, if you're like really hoping to make the bridge to go to France to do something, well, there is different ways that you can do that depending on your business, of course. If you're a startup, it's way easier because France opened up as much as they could. They opened up to foreign entrepreneur and innovation, especially on the visa. That's like one of the easiest one to get in the world, I guess. I don't know how many visa I gave, but a lot. So there's all of those stuff that's depending on your business, depending on the industry you're in, depending on what you want to do. Do you want to go there? Do you just want to do business and export? Like there is a lot of stuff that can happen.
Isabel, I do want to backtrack just a little bit. That was a lot of information, and I think that we will also be able to share some links after the fact. But I do want to backtrack because you said something that is, I think, really important. That's really worth repeating. a lot of people are sometimes when they think about, oh, doing business internationally, they can get intimidated and they don't realize that it's actually relatively easy. You know, what you said, which was talk to us, right? It's really that simple. And I think that that's worth repeating. Number one, what you said, ASEANs, I mean, this is what you guys specialize in. And
Yep.
so if you are a company that is a bit more mature, that is, you know, ready to take on an engagement with ASEANs, reach out to Isabel. It's right, or go into the website and contact the right person that you think can help you, and you can start an engagement with them. If you are earlier in your business development and you're looking more for like kind of like an on ramp, that is more community based rather than through professional services, then just come to French Tech. Right? Just show up and start talking to people there. And the last one that you mentioned, that third option, which was the French business,
Business friend.
is it right to say
It's
it's like
linked
the
to the
Chamber of
embassy.
Commerce?
Yeah.
I think
It's linked
people,
to the embassy.
especially for embassies, they get really intimidated to think, oh my God, it's an embassy. I should be an ambassador, or I have to be like, you know, I have to be a 40, 50 years old senior executive or politician to approach an embassy. And that's just not true. Sure, you want a meeting with the ambassador, you're going to have a really good reason. But when it comes to these networking and business building events, they're generally open to registration, sometimes free and sometimes for a relatively low cost, right?
Yeah. So yeah, just to like come back to this, is that, as you said, of course, going into the adventure of opening up a new market, that's a really long journey. You have to be prepared for it, etc., etc., etc. But this whole process of preparation doesn't have to be you yourself in front of your computer crying. It can, like, there is a lot of network for, this is for France, but this is for like every other countries. Most countries, they're gonna have communities, they're gonna have business center, they're gonna have the embassy, they're gonna have other type of networking, communities, just there to help you, and they're going to be really glad that you came, and they're going to do their best to help you. And it's gone, so depending on the step you're in, it's not going to be the same people, but as long as you start speaking to one person, then you're going to be linked to everyone. And like usually, like French community, especially business French community in Korea, is pretty small. Everyone knows each other. So as long as you start talking to someone, you're gonna get redirected to everyone. And yeah, so ASEANs, what we do is mostly so market entry, digital marketing at a global level. So this is more for professional, but you don't have to be that big to come to Agence. Don't worry. I'm currently helping a Korean startups with like really just a pitch in French, and get in contact with other people. It doesn't have to be like, they're not Samsung. Of course, we're helping Samsung as well, but it's not, you don't have to be huge to come to us. And even if it's not something that we can do directly, we're going to reconnect you to someone else. Like this is as we do all the time. And yeah, French Tech, mostly startups, entrepreneurs that are interesting in everything that's happening. And it's all about networking. The Chamber of Commerce or Business France, which is the like business trade agency linked to the government, that's their job, to help you. So yeah, you're gonna find a lot of people to redirect.
Right. And this is where one thing that I guess we would really want to encourage people, if you are going to reach out, have a clear pitch, right? Just if I think
That's
it's always
basic, yeah.
helpful when people approach you, whether it's for professional services or just for help, be a little bit clear, more than just I want to learn about France, right? Talk about a specific industry or things that you're looking for. Isabel, I'd like to take a question we've got from one member in the audience, Susana Gago. She says, Isabel, you mentioned that you are working with some beauty brands. How is the market in Korea for high-end organic cosmetics and sustainable fashion? Do you have some data in growth? Is it a country pro to sustainability, regenerative culture? So that's actually 3 questions. And do you have an answer for, so Isabel, do you have, can you address part of them? If not all
Well,
of them.
that's a bit tricky because you're asking me because I'm from Alliance, but I don't have that knowledge because my part is something else. I guess if you just ask me, maybe in MP, I can refer to my colleagues and give you more information on that. But I don't have the like. If you're asking me for numbers, I don't have them. I just know that indeed we have a lot of big clients in luxury and cosmetic in Korea, and they're doing pretty well. That's basically my only knowledge at that point. Sorry about that. But yeah, there is a market for luxury beauty and items in Korea. It is for sure, and it's doing pretty well. Even with COVID, it's doing pretty well.
Right. And I think speaking to those specific things about organic cosmetics and sustainable fashion,
Yeah.
What I've seen is small, but people seem to be starting to take care of it, starting to take notice. And it could be growing. And the way things happen usually in Korea, I don't have numbers for that, right? But it's no interest, no interest, no interest. Then people taking notice. And then that growth curve is, you know, you don't get a hockey puck in Korea. In Korea, you get more like a fishing hook. You know, it's just very slow, and then suddenly it takes off. So that's what I would add. But I think that because we talked about this, Isabella, a little bit, where we would get a lot of questions about fashion, and then maybe at some point in the you know, relatively near future, we can have a follow-up that we can share with people from this webinar through a blog about just some key facts about luxury brands in cosmetics and fashion in Korea. We do have a few more people in the audience. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grab a couple of questions. Oh, the next question was just Susanna saying thanks to us. So Susanna, you're very welcome. And we have Junhee. Junhee it's also around luxury. I'm in talks with luxury shops, hotels here. You mentioned that I need to adjust to locally. How much do I need to adjust and change for the demands of the local audience? I think this is kind of like an interesting thing. What I would like to do, Semin, do you think we can invite Junhee to join as a panelist? Because again, as we just mentioned, specifically for luxury brands in Korea, that would be something that we can follow up at a later time. But we can just chat a little bit more with Junhee, have her tell us what her company is. And then I think that with our complementary experience between Isabel, Jose, Semin has an understanding much more about Korea, then, you know, maybe we can give her a little bit of, you know, advice and guidance. Junhee, I'm going to unmute your microphone. Are you with us?
Still, there we go.
There we go. Hi, Junhee. All right. Junhee, take a look at your audio settings and come online, but I'd like to continue on this thought. And starting from the question that she asked, how much do I need to adjust and change for demands of a local population? I think that in a general, you're not going to get a general answer for that, right? There's going to be a lot of variability depending on your product and how different it is that the product is going to be, you know, how different that sensitivities are from the customers in your home country compared to the customers in the host country. So let's not talk about specifically, you know, the luxury market in economic terms, but let's just talk about it maybe a little bit culturally. So Semin, you lived in France for some time. Isabel, you're obviously from there. How compatible do you guys find to be French and Korean fashion in general? Like if I buy what would be considered a elegant outfit in Korea, obviously not a black suit and a tie because that goes everywhere, right? But like a trendy, modern, elegant outfit in Korea, and I go and I try to sell that to somebody in France, would that, you know, would it jive, or would it seem like it doesn't quite fit with mainstream culture? What would be your thoughts around that?
So for me, there is two stuff depending on the way you want to sell. Do you want to sell it as it's French and the whole French vibes goes with it, and people are going to buy it because it's French, and vice versa? It's Korean, so people are going to buy it because it's Korean. So that's something a bit particular. But then, like, if you, of course, if you take just the sense of fashion, what I see in the street in France versus what I can see in the street in Korea is not entirely different, but there is a bit of them that would go very well and goes very well in Korea, but in France that would be like, what are you doing? What's going on? There is stuff that would be accepted in Korea and not in France, and vice versa. And stuff that are gonna be seen as fashionable and trendable in Korea and not in France. So that's really different. So I guess it's really depends on your approach. If you're on the type of products that are at the limits, that would work in Korea but maybe less in France, then you have to see, do you want to adapt your product? Is your product even worse adapting to France? Like, is France actually a good market for you for this product? If you don't want to adopt it, you can say no. I mean, you don't have to go to France if your product is not adapted to it. You can just rethink your strategy. It's something that you need to check first. And if it is something that you don't want to adapt, but you want to sell as, okay, so it's coming from Korea. So what I'm selling to you right now is not something that would work in France, but it's something that has the Korean vibe, then it's a bit different in your marketing approach and in your branding.
Hello.
Oh, Junhee, there you are. Okay, we got
Hi,
you.
can
You
you
got
hear
your audio working.
Okay.
So we were answering a little bit your question. Thanks a lot, Isabel, for taking that on. And I think that's, you know, it is a little bit hard. It's a very typical question, right? How much do I need to localize? But it's really, really hard to answer that in a general sense for all products, even within a single industry, right? Junhee, tell us a little bit more. What are your products, and who is your target market in France, and who's your target market in Korea?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Especially Isabel. Actually, have you ever worked with a French company founded by Korean so far?
A French company
Founded by Korean? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm the one, and I'm actually making 100% made in France silk scarf here.
Yeah.
So initially, I was very worried about how am I going to defend made in France in Korea, because word is getting more and more nationalistic. So as you know, in France, we're all defending made in France, locally made. So I was a little bit worried about that part. And when I came here, actually, I'm not even sure whether they're listening to made in France part. I think as soon as they like the design or they like the quality, I think they just move on like that. And up to that point, I think it's good. And surprisingly enough, within a short time, 1 month, I had some development with the context here, which is much, much faster than what I expected compared to, you know, how it works in France. Only thing is that since I'm Korean and I speak very good Korean and I understand the culture, people just assume that I know like what goes on here, which is not the case at all. So they're telling me, oh, I mean, like a little thing is like even selecting photos or little details. And sometimes I'm wondering how much do I need to listen to them, or are they actually bullying me? And as a first timer bringing Made in France to Korea, I actually don't know how to judge the situation without knowing actually the market in Korea.
Yeah. So I get what you mean in the sense that it's so typical for Korean ethnic was actually foreigner in Korea to come up, and then actually all the Koreans expect you to be actually Korean and they don't get that you're not.
Right.
So I totally get your situation. It can be difficult, I know.
Right.
Most of my colleagues are actually like foreign Koreans, but from other countries, so they're actually not
Right.
Koreans, and they came here into a culture that is expecting them to behave as Korean, which they're not. So
Right.
I understand what you mean.
Right.
So there is, your question is really not that easy to answer right away, to be
Right.
honest, because it really depends on who's this partner, like how much trust do you put in them, what advice is it about? Is it about marketing? Is it about setting up the company? Like, is it an actual expert on the subject? Did you get other advice than just this person? But as a general advice, if it is about marketing and you have several people telling you the same stuff about your product, then it may mean something. And then you have to kind of rethink about that.
It's
so
more about
I guess
branding
we can.
at this point. Yeah, it's more about branding and the image.
So for the Made in France part, so I know it's really trendy in France. Like, Made in France is something that is even more trendier in France than in any other country. I think that it's not something that is yet coming up to Korea as a whole market. Maybe you're going to have more niche in luxury or something if you say that, okay, I'm from France, so I have like huge, like big quality, and it's something that comes up. But I think that the Made in France or Made in Korea is something that is starting to be understood and in Korea, but it's gonna be kind of this. I feel this is a feeling for me right now, but it's kind of the same as sustainable and all like eco-friendly and everything, because it's made in Korea. It's good product. It's close to home. You have less carbon printing, better quality. All this kind of vibe that goes with the Made in France or even the Made in Korea is something that is starting to come up. It's not yet, for me, it's something that will grow, but it's not yet completely there. Mario, what do you think?
Well, there's two thoughts that I have around this right now. The first one was more of a comment that I wanted to make to comment and question to Jose, which is, what advice do you give to an entrepreneur such as Junhee, who is going into a new market? She understands her home market. She's trying to sell the same product into a new market, and she's trying to figure out the partners and people who I'm going to talk to. Are they giving me some honest feedback that I need to listen to, or are they bullying me to try to, get something out of me? I think that situation is really common. And what would you say is a good, how can an entrepreneur tell the difference between those two cases?
Well, and it's like everybody's saying, it's not an easy question. So I've had experience with projects where we've looked to hire a company that would spend $100,000 just to find the right demographic, the right customer to sell something to, like a consumer product. And what part of what they do is they do focus group studies. So they bring people together and they say, here's my product. What do you think? And in some groups you tell them, oh, this is made in France, this is sustainably sourced, and so on and so forth. Then you get, and other times you ask different questions. Here's the product. You don't tell them anything. What do you think? And then there's questions from the audience. Well, is it sustainably sourced? Is it produced in, in fair wages, and so on and so forth? So it's a very big question. And so, of course, as a small company, you can't spend a fortune to develop a product. But what you can do is you can get into environments such as the suggestions Isabel has put forward, which is get into talk to other companies, other startups, other companies, maybe hopefully in your field or similar field, some parallel field, and ask them questions and participate in events where they might show up as well, and you have those informal conversations as well. I ran into this situation. Do you run into that situation? It's like, and you compare notes and you start understanding, from your colleagues in the industry or in similar industries. So I think that the low cost way of doing some marketing research is to approach other companies that are trying to do something similar to what you're doing. And it could be, hopefully it's a French product trying to be sold in Korea. If not, as a proxy for that, other foreign products, from other companies in Europe. It could be from, let's say, the Nordic countries, or from Spain, or from Switzerland. And there's associations for those groups as well. So I would say being having a French product, you shouldn't, let's say, just limit yourself to the French experience. I think it's always helpful to have the broader perspective, or let's call it maybe the European product going into Korean, the Korean market, and therefore try to find those events, and we see those all the time. French Tech, the Swiss Business Hub, there's Sweden, Korea. There's all these countries that have these, similar to what French Tech Seoul does.
Okay, I'm not in part of any community at all. As someone who's staying in Korea for 1 month, am I allowed to join French Tech, or is there any other community that you recommend me to join?
So French Tech, I mean, some of our members are not even in Korea. Like, it's just people that are interested in Korea and what's happening. We have members that are basically in France.
Right.
We actually have one of our board members who's stuck in France because of coronavirus. So like,
Right.
you on that. But for your particular case, actually, I was thinking a bit more about, there is what we call the CCEF, Cercle des Entrepreneurs Français en Corée. That would actually be a good one for you, where you can meet other entrepreneurs on, not especially on innovative subject, but that, I mean, as they explained really well, France has a lot of different communities to make you meet people that did the same as you, had the same issue, overcame it, that you can talk together. You can see, okay, I have this problem with this person, and they're gonna say, like, the business world is really small. Everyone knows each other. If the person you're talking to, you have a trust issue with them, just reach out to your local network, would it be friends, or would it be any other like countries,
Right.
And you're going to get feedback for people, and you're going to see.
I actually don't have any trust issue. It's more of a aesthetic issue. And I'm the designer by end of the day, but I don't know how much I need to listen for local advice. So it was more of a dosage. And do you know what I mean? More of a balancing.
I get
and for a small company like me, who's actually starting to brand and coming to Korean market, you were saying that you're not only dealing with a global company for digital marketing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So like I think after Mario, you're gonna maybe send my contact to everyone. So don't hesitate to like contact me directly and I can redirect you to people.
All right. I actually contacted you through LinkedIn before I came here, but unfortunately I wasn't able to connect with you.
Really sorry.
Yuhi, are you aware of an event that's happening? Well, it's today for me. It's tomorrow for Korea, which is a Fab Fashion and Beauty Tech Seoul.
Right, I'm not aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, has I'm gonna post this. This is something that I saw on LinkedIn that I forwarded to a few people, and it's an event where actually Hannah is gonna be in that one. Hannah Lee from Elixir is gonna be talking there. She's and that's cosmetics, but the topic is beauty and fashion tech experience, from the Korean perspective of that.
Okay.
So the two hosts actually are friends of ours. Hannah, we've worked with her, and Claire Chang, I've worked with her for the last couple of years on entrepreneurial workshops. So I think that would be really good for you, Junhee, to try to link up with them as well. And there was another, was that Susanna that had a question about organic and sustainable products? You should also check that event out because Hannah from Elixir that hosts it, she has a line of sustainable cosmetics. And there's definitely starting and growing movement, around that. So that's really a good. Thanks a lot, Jose. I had totally forgotten about that. I'm so glad that you.
I referred Susanna to that event, and also let me see. There was something else. And to the Impact Collective. So she was submitting an application for that.
Right. Thanks. Speaking of all the things I forgot to mention, right? Yeah. So that would be that's definitely a place to go. And I think I really want to emphasize and double up on what Isabel said about joining French Tech. I think, Junhee, in your case, if your strong parts are in your product well enough, I guess you don't need advice from us directly about your product. It's something that you can go to the market. And I think that relying on a community like French Tech, especially because if you are going back to France and from France, you want to be able to keep up your customer relationships over here, that's where the tech part can really help. How do you leverage digital tools so that you can, it's never going to be the exact same thing as being there in person, but what and how could you manage things with content production as well as some basic analytics that it sounds scary to a lot of people. Oh my God, analytics, but it's usually built into the software, right? And you just need somebody, for example, from French Tech to tell you, oh yeah, use this software and then just do stuff in X, Y, or Z way. And at the end of the week, you can check out the reports, and the reports are like the hard part of the analytics is done for you. You just have to know, how to understand how to read the graphs and how to use the software properly for things to get properly logged. So I really hope, Junhee, that we keep hearing from you even after you leave from Korea. Now I would like to move on really quickly because we had another question, this one from Moonkyu Kim, and I want to make sure we get to this before the end of our session today. So Moonkyu says that he wants to set up a price list. He wants to figure out how does he set up his price list for products that they want to be selling into France. And the two types of products that they have are enterprise software, kind of like Slack, or medical devices. I think that the super brief answer that I'd like to give is those things that Isabel mentioned previously, which was go to French Tech events, depending on the stage of the maturity and whether you need a professional opinion, approach Asians. Go to French Tech or probably and all three, and also go to the events by the embassy. Isabel, are you aware if there's anything going on particularly for, I'm sure for enterprise software, there's a lot because France is really strong in software, but what about biomedical devices? We haven't touched on that. Are you aware of biomedical exchanges or biomedical trade between France and Korea?
Yeah, yeah, there is. Like as I said, French is pretty good on all this kind of stuff. There is like BioMérieux, for example. It's a French company. You have Pasteur as well. They're doing stuff. Pastel, as you say in Korea. You have Sanofi's here. Like you have a lot of others, and so just to answer to, and I actually helped some Korean biotech companies to go to France and connect them with a few of my former life into health tech innovation. So that's also something that that can be really, really good. So there's definitely stuff going on. On your question on how to make decide on a price, I would say that the question, like the answer I can give is something really broad, and it's like for every market. The way you're gonna define your price in France is gonna be the same as you decided it in Korea. You have to do benchmark. You have to like do surveys, customer surveys. You have to like see who are your actual customer, how much they're ready to pay for this, how much do they have, what are the current solutions that exist, how much are those current solution sales. So it's going to be the exact same method as what you did in Korea, just you have to do it again. Think about it as if you have to do it again from scratch, and then it's going to be easier to adapt to what you actually have here to others. Yeah, that's pretty broad, but that's the best answer I can give you right now.
And one last thing that I would add to this is that another thing Jose and I have kind of encountered in the last year is that you know, kind of connecting fashion to technology. Cosmetics used to be purely about aesthetics and fashion, but it has really been shifting towards health. And now you're starting to see a blending between health and wellness. And I just had a flash memory as you were talking about Sanofi and all of these. L'Oreal. L'Oreal is a French company,
Yes.
and Jose, they have a big biotech arm, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they have a whole group that all they do is scout startups and technology, and you know, some of them make it, some of them don't, but they're certainly always on the lookout for the next big thing.
And if you take the example of the last Vivatech, so Vivatech, it's like a big startup event in France. Like it's our little CES. It's not that little, but it's well. And there were a Korean startup. If I remember correctly, it's LULULab. They do like a cosmetic, it's a device that analyzes your skin and like what type of product should go with it and everything. And they won a challenge with, I think it was L'Oreal or LVMH, and they were over there invited to go. So that's definitely something that's happening a lot with Korea and France.
That's great. Yep. So there we go. That's plenty of things to do. So just as a brief summary, one more time, you want to do business with France, there's 3 ways to go at it that we could tell you about today. Talk to ASEANs, come to French Tech, and look out for the industry and embassy events that are held around the French embassy. Isabel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the feedback that you gave to us in a general sense, specifically for the time that you were able to spend with Junhee to talk a little bit more about her market and, you know, welcome her into the community. Jose, Sam, and Hassan, thanks again for joining us and helping us to set up the call today. And we are happy to be here. We are posting, as I mentioned in the chat, so this is currently streaming live to YouTube, and it will be available there permanently for anybody who wants to review. And we will see everybody again in 2 weeks. Thank thanks a lot, and have a great evening in Seoul. Have a great morning in Boston, and I guess afternoon-ish in France, right?
Yeah. Afternoon-ish. Yeah, that's the right.
Have a great
And
Thursday, everybody.
yeah.
How about that?
Sounds good.
And just
Right.
as everyone is leaving, as a final note, we're actually doing a French Tech event at the end of the month, so you're all welcome to join.
What day is it? Has the date been announced?
Then I announced it today, so it's normal if you don't have the information yet.
Oh, okay, great. August 27th. There it is. All right, awesome. Thanks a lot, Isabel. So let's
Thank
all
you,
be in touch soon.
everyone.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.